dairy farm, and when we first started out, we were by ourselves, and that was when we first hired help, was when I was pregnant with number 3, because I literally just got to the point where I don't think I could walk.
What were you doing on the farm at that time?
What were we doing? I was milking. Well, everything.
Yeah.
We rotated, like when we first started, and we had so we had a 2-year-old and an infant, and then I got pregnant with the third when our infant had turned 2. So I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so the way we worked it, because we didn't have any hired help, we rotated days. So like he would milk morning, nights, and then the next day I would go milk the morning and the night. So it ended up being like 18-hour days for one of us, because we, with little kids, wintertime, like you're trying to just kind of do what you can. And so if you're milking, everybody's milking like the morning and everybody's milking the night, you just burn out. So we tried to rotate like the days. And then I got to a point where I was just too big pregnant that I couldn't walk. It was bad.
So then Roy had to do all the milking.
No, we actually
got
that was the defining moment of like, let's hire some help. And actually we hired, she was a dairy farmer's daughter, she was older, but she lived up the road. And so she came and milked mornings to like help out. Cause I literally like got to the point where I was so huge pregnant, I couldn't even like walk. I mean, it was bad. I think I had like a pinched nerve, and I was at the chiropractor.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So, but it was,
That's not fun.
That was our defining moment. Actually, or did we have, you don't know? We had an outside, I think we hired an outside guy too. Finally. Ulysses. We brought on Ulysses then too. I don't know.
You got to quit talking to him over there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, because I know if I say something wrong, he's gonna come over and like tell me, that's not right.
Then he's gonna have to deal with me, because I'm gonna be like, hey, you're screwing up my thing, man.
Yeah. And then leave. Go.
And we discovered I'm 2 years older than him, so.
Oh. So you have seniority.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Well,
so he has to listen.
I'm 2 years older than him too. I robbed the cradle.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a cradle robber.
Which means you're the same age as me, so
yeah.
We're not sure who has seniority here on the podcast.
You. I'm going with you.
Oh, okay.
I'm voting you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm used to that.
Okay. We got that established.
So how did you get into the whole farming thing? Like going way back, did you grow up on a farm?
Yeah. So kind of. My dad and grandpa, they dairied till they went on a buyout in the early 90s, I think. So I grew up kind of in the parlor with my dad. And after they sold out, I was into the animal thing. I've always been an animal nut. So they would buy me replacement heifers, or we'd even I can remember back in the day when bull calves were bringing like $1 a piece, or they're pretty much giving them away at the sale barn. And so I'd go get 10 of them, and I'd raise them up till 600 to 800 pounds and sell them. And that was kind of how I funded my activities as a kid. Like I can remember I bought my first saddle. I can remember I was so excited. I sold a group of Holstein steers, and I took that money and went next door, because the tack shop was literally right next door to the sale barn. So like my life, I've grown up like in the sale barn at the tack store. And I can remember taking that money that I got, because this was back in the day when they would just give you cash, right? Cold hard cash. And I can remember taking one of my first checks, and I went and bought myself like my first real saddle, and it was like one of those moments of my life, because I'm crazy about horses. Yeah, it was one of those first moments of my life that like you're like, this, I did it all by myself, right? Raising bottle calves. So,
what does it take to do that as a kid? What are you doing? And can you do it really all by yourself?
No, I obviously, like, I was probably, how old was I? Maybe 12 or 13, I think, when I did the saddle thing. And so I was fairly independent, but I can remember brought home one sick calf, right? And it gets the whole group sick, like always, So I can remember my dad helped me treat them and stuff. And we lost a couple of them, and I remember bawling for hours. But, so my mom and dad helped a lot. Anything I've kind of been into, my mom and dad have kind of fostered, whatever it is. None of them ride horses, but I've always had horses and always been really involved in that. But so that led into, I did FFA, 4-H. I actually would buy my show heifers from Roy. I'm gonna call him Ruggy. His nickname's Ruggy. So when we were kids, his family actually went and they were farming on the farm that my dad and grandpa sold out on. And so that's where we went and I would buy my replacement heifers. That's how I met him. But he's 2 years younger than me. So when you're like 13 and there's this little boy that's like selling you calves, like you don't pay much attention to it, right? So
yeah, 2 years is a lot bigger.
Yeah, it's
gap.
a lot. It's a lot when you're kids. Now it's not so bad. He just has to make fun of me for being older. But I can remember, so, FFA, 4-H, I always kind of knew I thought going to vet school. So college path, I go to WSU and I did animal science with like the pre-vet emphasis. And my dad still says, I remember the day you called home and you said, Dad, I think I want to be a dairy farmer. And I said, what the hell? You don't want to do what? You want to be, wait, whoa, hold on. It's like, back up here. What's going on? And so I had done some dairy management classes, and actually the vet who's actually still our herd vet, he started doing my vet work on horse stuff when I was a kid. And so I did a lot of ride along stuff with him, and kind of like he was the one, poor guy. I had to, I was his tag along. And I remember, I don't even remember how the conversation came up, but him and I had a pretty in-depth conversation when I was away at school, because WSU is his alma mater too. And he kind of sat me down and was like, well, when you're grown up, when you're all done with this, what kind of lifestyle do you want? You're going to, do you want to have kids? How do you want to raise your kids? Like what, and he sat down and talked to me a lot. And he's like, look, I'm not telling you don't want to be a vet, but you don't want to be a vet. It was kind of how it was. He's like, if you want just to be home and spend time with your kids and spend time with your family, he's like, don't go down the large animal vet path. He's like, we knew each other really well. With your personality type, you're not going to be able to say no to those emergency calls. You're not going to be able to turn people away. Like, think of some other options. And so, of course, what's your next option? Oh, I want to be a dairy farmer. I don't ever want to make money again.
But what were you thinking though? Like what?
I wanted to go to vet school. Like from the time in first grade all the way through, I was going to be a veterinarian.
But when you said that you wanted to become a dairy farmer, you told your dad that. What image did you have in your mind? What attracted you to it? What did you love about it? I think it's
because it's what I knew. I guess from the time I was a little kid, like you're with. I love cows, obviously. You're with animals every single day. You're home. I guess like you have that big red barn picture where everybody's like cohesive and working together, and we all love each other and sing freaking Kumbaya every night, which doesn't happen a whole lot when it boils down to it.
Yeah.
But it's just it's that lifestyle, I think, that attracts you to that. And it's funny because I can remember being 18, 19 years old. I'm never having kids. I'm having a career. I'm, And then as you age, it's like, I don't know if it's like that biological clock starts ticking, but I mean, I've never been a huge fan of other people's kids, so I never thought I wanted them, right? Like I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. I don't like other people's kids for the most part. I've got some close friends. I get along with them okay, but for the most part, like other kids, I'm like, oh. But my kids are the best thing that ever happened to me, right? So it was a good decision. I don't regret it, I guess. Is that a good thing? Maybe. I'm just telling myself that to feel better about myself.
I was going to ask you when you met Roy, but you've known each other since you were...
We've known each other since we were kids. Do you want to know like that defining moment when I was like, hey, this guy?
The guy that you got...
Yeah, that guy. This guy that impregnated me, right?
Yeah. The guy that you got calves from, though, when he was 2 years younger than you.
Was I thinking when I was 13 or 14 years old that he was going to be the future father of my children? No.
No,
that's like you don't think about. That doesn't come into play here. He was just a kid running around county fair, right?
So when did it change? What was that moment?
So I actually remember it. This is the funny thing. I just told this story yesterday, I think. I was home from WSU, and I worked at a bakery in town. I started working there. I did community college. I started working there when I was going to community college to kind of pay my way through school. So when I came home for summers, I would go help them out. I loved it. I still love it. I still go there. They have the best sourdough on the planet, Market Street Bakery. They're awesome. Anyways, his mom had come in, and I think she wanted something that wasn't quite ready yet. And I was like, hey, I'll drop it off on my way by. Like, their farm's not too far from my parents' house. And so I swing in and we were kind of visiting. She's like, oh, Ruggs is out in the barn. He'd love to see it. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So I walk into the parlor and he's milking cows and he Carhartts. And he doesn't have a shirt on and it's like August and he's pretty tan and he might have been 18 at this point. And I was like, oh, hey, are you legal? How old are you? When did you turn 18? So we were actually kind of always friends, I guess, for a long time. We were pretty close friends. And I don't know. I guess you just kind of follow. I have this theory: men and women can't be friends without one or the other kind of developing feelings, right? If you're close friends, it's bound to happen. Yeah. Deny me all you want, but it's true.
So who took the first move, or who was the first?
I'm pretty sure it's me. I still have to. I chased him pretty hard, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm not even going to deny it.
So did you end up asking him out?
I don't know if there was ever that ask each other out thing, because we were such close friends. Yeah. This was of course back before MySpace and Facebook, and to text message you had the Nokia snake phone, right? But we ran around, we partied kind of in the same crowd, and we ran around a lot together and just kind of had a pretty close friendship. And I guess that just kind of, I probably had one too many beers and took it a little too far. Probably what happened. I mean, you're kids, right? I think we were I don't even know if he was 21 yet. We kind of, I don't know if you call it dating, because I was still going to school at Wazoo. He's living at home milking cows for mom and dad. It was kind of like, hey, I'm home for the weekend. What are you doing? Want to hang out? Yeah. And then so I went to work for Dairy Gold after college, and I was down in Twin Falls, Idaho for a long time. And then I actually went to Spokane. So it was always kind of that casual, I say casual, friends. We're really good friends. We're really friendly. And
long distance relationship.
No,
but not really a relationship.
Yeah, not really a relationship. I think the coin term is friends with benefits.
I wasn't gonna say it, but
I'm not afraid to say it. So after I was working in Spokane I actually quit my job and came home. I was home 2 months and then I was pregnant. So it happened really quick. We always say how old's our oldest? Well, that's how long we've actually been dating.
So when did you guys decide, hey, we're going to farm together? Because that's a big step.
He'd been trying off and on for a while to start a farm. He kind of went off on his own with his dad and started a secondary in 2007. They went through the whole flood thing, and so he kind of went back to, I think actually when we decided to farming, he was building dairy barns. His grandpa had a dairy barn construction business for a long time, and so he kind of learned the trade there. And so he had been bugging these people that had sold out 5 years prior. I mean, he probably knocked on their door every couple months just to say, hey, you ready to lease a place? Hey, you ready to lease? Well, and so finally, one of the times he knocked on the door, they were actually ready to lease a place. And, we'd always kind of done farm work together, I guess, his mom and dad dairy. And so I fed calves for him, and I think I bred, on their heifer place for a while, spent a summer doing that. So we'd always kind of farm together, and I don't think there was ever any of that discussion hey, let's be dairy farmers. Right. It was we are
just
going to. Yeah, we're going to. I think he had 80-ish cows of his own that he had been milking at his dad's place when we did start. So he had been kind of stockpiling over the years and stuff like that. So he had his game plan. I just kind of got drug along on the ride, and he just got lucky with that. I went to school for it. That I was willing. I was a willing participant, and I was willing to work.
You just got lucky that he was, storing, building his herd.
Maybe and that might be why I picked him out of the crowd. I was like, this guy's doing what I want to do.
This guy,
he's kind of cute.
This guy comes with cows.
Yes, it was a requirement. I didn't want to trade for goats and rice. It was cows. That was my dowry.
Oh man! So then you start farming, and that takes us up to the point where we started talking about you were
little kids
and pregnant with another, and
didn't stay away from me. So.
Well. Again, I wasn't going to say anything, but
yeah. So we started, out on our own lease facility. It was 2012. We had a 2-year-old and I think she was 4 months or ish when we started. And we started, so the day we started, I think we had 80 cows. And then by the next, within 2 days, we had bought some coal cows from a guy down the road. I think we were up to 100, 110 or something like that within a couple days. And it was a lot. It was a lot of work. It was no hired help.
No hired help at all.
Just us, 2 babies. How we didn't murder each other. How we stayed together through all that. The family that works together and stays together, where they just hate each other. It was a lot of stress. You're figuring it all out on your own. When you go from working a regular job, you've got a normal paycheck. I worked for Dairy Gold. I made really good money coming out of college as a young single girl. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you got to pay your own bills. It's like you had to grow up, right? This is stupid. I have to pay my own bills. And then it's not just you have to pay your own bills. We went from used vehicles, I think maybe we had a cell phone. We didn't have internet. We didn't have TV. Our rent payment was $500 a month. We lived pretty, we lived cheap because we are cheap. So then you go to all of a sudden all these bills, and grain bills, vet bills, your hoof trimmer, it's just, you don't, a lot of stuff you don't think about power, how much your power bill is going to increase, and on top of a lease payment, cow payments. We started off, we had a line of credit that was pretty small with Northwest Farm Credit. And of course in 2012, everybody knows, well, not everybody, but anybody who's a farmer, there was not a good milk market, right?
Right.
But cows were cheap. So that was kind of our benefit. But yeah, we worked hard. It was a lot of really long. I can remember, getting up at 3 a.m. and not going back in the house until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. You got a problem cow, or it's just you, right? It's just you. So you got to do everything. And I think we finally got up to, when we were there, the facilities were 120 cow facility, but pasture, and a lot of pasture. So in the spring, summer, he loves to trade cattle. That's just his deal. He loves to buy and sell cows. So he would buy up springtime, and so we would increase our herd numbers. I think we got up to, the biggest we were was 200. And that was kind of when, I'm pregnant with number 3. We're milking about 200 cows. Let's maybe look at some hired help. And in some ways it's easier. And then on the other hand, employees are they're tough. Employees are tough. Mm-hmm. Anybody who has to manage other people can tell you managing people is a lot harder than managing cows. But we've been lucky. The lady that milked cows that kind of took over my milk shift, she'd been raised on a dairy, and she was, had little kids and just kind of wanted to supplement some income. She was fantastic. I love her to death. I still do. And then we hired one outside guy part-time, and it was kind of nice because we could have just an afternoon to just take a breath. My parents had a place about 5 minutes up the road on the lake. We could go for a ride on the boat. It was really nice. So
how many years did you go without being able to do that before you got to that point?
It was about 2 years. So then we originally signed a 3-year lease on that place. And we obviously had outgrown it, right? We grew. He buys cows like little kids buy candy corn at Halloween. So we outgrew that, and we had signed a 3-year lease. So we were looking for bigger facilities, and we had found one about an hour north of here. And so we were ready to sign a contract with the guy. We've been negotiating back and forth with lawyers and everything. We had agreed to buy it, and this is back, so it's 14. Cows are through the roof, right? So we signed an agreement to buy a herd of 500 cows at $2,000 a piece.
Oof.
Not cheap, right? But we were going to a facility that could milk potentially 1,000 cows. So the day that we were to meet the guy and sign a lease, he changed his mind. So we're sitting here with oh crap, we've signed an agreement to purchase 500 cows, and we have 200. What are we going to do with all these cows? What are we going to do? So, because the people that had our farm had somebody coming in behind us you know, because we let this lease go, right?
Yeah.
And even if we hadn't let this lease go, I don't know if we would have re-signed there anyway. But so we sold out, basically. We loaded cows on semi-trucks, and they went to Idaho. It was probably one of the harder days for me, because those were all my babies I'd raised, and, you know, a couple of them were my old show cows. Like, it was tough. So, and then that herd that we bought, we sold some, kind of parceled some out between a couple different dairies, like just tried to kind of make it work. Like, hey, do you want to milk 100 of my cows? Like, yeah, you're not full or anything, are you? Right. So we kind of had to like shove some here, shove some there, because we really wanted to hang on. They were like 40 years with the AI breeding. They were just nice cows. But, you know, 14, we actually made money. So that's how we bought this place. We were able to, you know, take the money and pay cash for this place. So, I mean, that was the 1 year I think we've done. The year we sold out is the year that we did the best. Weird how that works. But, and so then eventually it got to the point where we had a quota, you know, the quota deal with Dairy Gold. You have, I think it's 6 months to use, or 6 months if you want to sell it, and then another 6 months after that to like either use it or lose it, right? So we're getting down there. We actually ended up selling a lot of that herd because cow prices were still pretty high. So we actually were able to turn those cows that we had committed to buy. We were actually able to turn them for the same amount of money we paid for them. And, you know, we got a few calves out of them. This was back when, you know, I think bull calves were bringing like $500 a piece. We literally lived off of like bull calf money. Because if you're getting $500 a pop on your bull calves on a herd of like, you know, 350, 400 cows, it's not too bad. Yeah, it's all cash money. Hopefully nobody tells the government. But, so we're getting down to the wire on whether or not, you know, we've got to find a farm or we're not going to have any quota left. And I think, you know, quotas, it's changed so much over the last few years, where sometimes it's not worth anything and sometimes it's worth a ton of money. But either way, you got to buy it to get back in, right? You got to find somebody that wants to go out and you got to buy it to get back in. Because
the cooperative, Dairy Gold, as a cooperative of dairy farmers, kind of sets how much production there can be.
Yes. Yeah. So we had our set amount. We had a set amount that was given to us. We kind of got it in at the perfect time in 2012. It was right before this whole quota idea got implemented. So we were given what we needed at the time for when we were milking the 120 cows or whatever. And then when we bought the cows, that other herd of cows, the quota that they had used for those cows came with it, right?
Oh, wow.
So we got a pretty decent chunk of quota. So for us to we can't sell it anymore because we're past our 6 months of selling it. So we really need to find a dairy. And I mean, there's not, if you want a dairy farm, like there's not a lot of options, really. Like, you know, building one from the ground up, you can't afford to do it. And there's such a group of people here that don't, you know, they're not ready to sell it. They're kind of in that middle age group where they're not quite ready to retire. You know, one of the kids might want to take it over. It's really hard to find ground and facilities. So we actually ended up, we were down to the wire. It was like 3 or 4 weeks before our like drop dead date, right? A facility came available, not too far from here that had a bunch of cows on it that weren't really being taken care of very well. And so we kind of committed to that. We ended up buying the whole herd. It was mainly milking shorthorns.
Wow.
Don't ask.
Wow.
It was red and whites, they like to call them, right? So that was a kind of a mix of like Ayrshire shorthorns and red and white Holsteins. There was a few black and white cows in there, but not a whole lot. A couple jerseys. But the guy was kind of into his red and whites. And so we signed an agreement to take over that facility and basically buy, everything from the bottle babies, like all the way through all the milk cows, dry cows. It was like a whole package deal.
You have to nurse those cows kind of back to better health.
It was, yeah. Looking back, I don't regret doing it, but it was tough. So the first, you get your quality tests back from the co-op, and we knew that they had like some somatic cell issues, and I know they had some raw count issues, but the cows were averaging 8 pounds of milk per day.
What's normal?
Daily. On a shorthorn or on like a normal? What's normal on a dairy cow? You're like,
Holstein dairy cow.
So like 70, 80 pounds, I would say is pretty average.
So like 10% of what they should have been.
Yeah, it was bad. So the somatic cell count, which like our cooperative, there's a federal number you have to send, and then a cooperative number. So in our
they have higher standards for the cooperative.
Yes, our cooperative has higher standards than what the nation has, and so what the cooperative has in place is 400,000. The herd average for their somatic cell count was like 620, right? So they're over. Like I don't even know. I don't think they had actually been technically allowed to ship milk for a while. Like I think it was getting dumped down the drain. And then same thing with like a raw bacterial count. So their bacterial counts were like through the roof. It was just like, you kind of walk into this going, what are we thinking?
Because the cows hadn't been well taken care of, the milk couldn't be used and had to be dumped down the drain.
Dumped down the drain. So that was part of like why it was kind of a fire. Call it a fire sale.
Yeah. But that's interesting for people who worry about their milk, for instance.
Yeah.
Number one, it has to meet standards, and it does make a difference in your milk if you don't take care of your cows.
Oh yeah.
It's not like just great milk comes out and someone can be treating their cows poorly. If they treat if somebody treats their cows poorly, the cooperative's gonna know.
Yeah, no, they do, because there's so many quality parameters in place to ensure that the farmers are doing what's needing to be done to ensure quality milk, right?
And taking care of the animals.
Like what Dairy Gold's standards are is way higher. They have way higher standards. Like they say we're the best cooperative in the nation, and it's true, because our standards are higher than what's allowed nationally. And it's true. We do. We have good milk. We've got good farmers. Like, and they, we just went through a farm audit yesterday on animal welfare, and it's, they come through and they look at everything from my calves that have just hit the ground all the way through my milk cows, my dry cows.
They hit the ground?
Yeah. Well, when they're being born. But so yeah, and I remember the first milking, we took over. It was like the middle of the day. It was just complete chaos, right? I mean, there's like the cooperatives there, and like I think the state vet's there. I mean, it was just chaos, complete chaos. So we're getting ready. It's rolling around to milking time, and the employees, we kind of got lucky. The guys that had been working there stayed on. And we go in the parlor. It's milking time. It's 4:00 in the afternoon. It was September, and so it's getting darker out. And the milkers are wearing headlamps. We're like, what's up with the flashlight on your forehead, buddy? My limited Spanish, their limited English. None of the lights worked in the parlor.
Oh man!
So it's like, I mean, these guys have been milking cows pitch black for I don't know how long. And how do you milk a cow? How do you milk a cow in the dark? Like,
those
it
poor
doesn't work, right? So, we're thinking, we're gonna have to go replace all these light fixtures, and it's gonna cost us some money. The light bulbs were just burnt out.
That's it.
Yeah, that was it. It cost me like $80 at Home Depot. Yeah.
And here all along, these poor workers.
Yeah, these guys have been wearing headlamps.
Oh man.
Yeah. So we were at that facility.
Well, sometimes it's time for a certain operator to get out.
Yeah, he was an absentee owner. His main residence was Texas, and then he's originally from Ecuador, so he was back and forth a lot. So he was pretty much completely absentee, right? I think he was around here and there. Like when we were doing the transition, taking over, he came up, and
it just doesn't tend to work out when people do that, and it
it
doesn't really happen very much.
No, and on the other hand, of the people running the facility, it really wasn't their fault, because he was supposed to be paying for everything, and if you're not getting any money to, number one, for your pay, for let alone your paycheck, let alone feed for the cows or feed money for the vet, like money to pay the other employees, you're trying to manage a farm where there's literally no funding coming in. Like, I think you just kind of either you throw in the towel and walk away from it, or you just try and get by with what you can. And it's so it can't really, it's hard because you can't really try and lay fault on any of the employees. I think the guy had run into some trouble financially. Obviously, I don't want to really I don't really know the whole situation behind it, but you know, it's hard to point the finger at any one party, but it was just kind of an unfortunate sequence of events, I think, that kind of led to the downward spiral of it.
So you got this place on a fire sale, as you say.
Yeah,
you,
well,
you nurse the animals and the buildings and everything back to health.
And some of the animals recovered okay, some of them didn't. I mean, some of them just never really quite mount. But, you know, we still in our herd today. So we took that over in the end of 15, and I still to this day have some cows in our herd that we bought originally in that deal. So, you know, some of them did really well, some of them didn't. And it was kind of a recycle process, right? We were kind of cycling, you know, once you get them back into shape. So it was a lot of, and luckily Roy loves to buy cows. That's just like, he loves it. That's kind of his thing. I always say, why don't you just go be a horse trader? But, you know, so he was able to kind of do what he really enjoys doing and kind of cycle through. So we ended up culling quite a few. I mean, I don't even remember what our cull rate was. It was something crazy, like 60%, I think, for the first couple months. And, you know, trying to replace them with younger cows that milk. So it was a big, huge turnover process, but we learned a ton. I mean, it was such a good you know, looking back, should we have done it? I don't know. We definitely didn't make money doing it, but we did learn a lot. You learn a lot about cows when you're taking a cow that's her nutritional needs haven't been met. I mean, it's like a downward spiral, right? I mean, it'll carry through all the way through her lactation into her dry period. Even when she calves in, we had a lot of dystocia issues, metritis. So dystocia, I talk in layman terms. So a lot of calving issues, a lot of like dirty uteruses, metabolic problems at first. So, you know, you figure out what works, right? And so we collectively, him and I learned a lot about herd health. I think we took a lot away from that whole experience. And, you know, it's just, I don't know. I guess I felt I'm a softie. Like, I'm an animal lover, right? So I mean, you take these animals and you feel bad, right? You feel bad for them. So it was hard. Like, for me to when we culled, I'm like, you know, they made it through so much. Like, can't we just keep her? I don't care. She's only given like 20 pounds of milk. Can't we just keep her around? Like, you know, she's been through the ringer, you know? So I said, in fact, so my daughter she just sold her market steer at the sale. This is her second one. And there were a lot of tears. And I said, you know, honey, I still have a hard time selling our babies, you know, because I do most of the calf stuff. And he just sold like 4 or 5, you know, breeding size heifers. And I was like, but those are my babies. Like, it's still hard for me. And even though I should be used to it by now, it's still hard. Cause you know, are they going to love them like I love them? I don't know.
So how big is your farm now?
Oh, so we've now moved again. There was a facility that came open a little farther out the valley from us. It's a little bit bigger facility, more ground. And so I don't think honestly, we were milking about 350-ish when we left there, and we're still probably 380-ish to 400 now. So right about the same size, but we just moved over. It's a little bit more barn space, and just a little bit more ground, a little better. We definitely downgraded in our parlor. The parlor at the other place was it was amazing. This one's a little old, needs some upgrades. But barn space wise, these barns are primo.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
I can tell that and you've said it too, you're totally an animal person, an animal lover. What about the food part of it though? Like the milk, what's it like producing food that people eat? Drink, I guess, depending on what form it is.
It's a double-edged sword, right? So you work your butt off because the numbers, you have these parameters and these numbers, and so you're always, for me anyway, because I care, you're always trying to do better. Like when we took over that herd that was 680 somatic cell, I'm in the parlor, I'm milking 6 days a week, and I had on 350 cows, I had our somatic cell down to 60, right? Because that's just how I am. Like
they were super healthy cows.
So and everybody told me, oh, milking that many cows, you won't be able to be under 200,000 somatic cell. And so I'm like kind of with that, like, oh, watch me, ooh, watch me. So when you're able to look at your numbers and your benchmarks, you're like, what can I do to do better? How can I be better? And so you learn that there's so many different things that go into it. It's not just like, oh, well, there's this cow have mastitis, so let's treat her. No, like, okay, well, it's going to start with what you're putting into her. What's your feed? And then what's her environment like? Is she able to go lay down? Does she have enough bunk space? Is her bed clean? Is she dry? Her feet, if she have good feet? Is she lame? Is she, there's just so many different things that go into making quality milk than just like, oh, I love you.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So there, and like I said, with that whole experience of us taking over that herd of cows, we learned a lot about what goes into making good milk. And
And it sounds like from what you're describing, everything about making quality milk is just the health of your cows.
Take care of them. Yeah, you gotta take care of them. I mean, there's a lot into taking care of them, and I have a lot of people. We sell a lot of heifers. I sell a lot of calves. We don't have a real big heifer facility there, and right now, for what you can raise a heifer for, you can go buy one that's ready to have a baby for less money, right? So we kind of turn over on our heifers, and this is a newer thing. But so I'm always trying to educate these people that take these calves from me. Well, there's a lot more that goes into this than just like give her a bottle of milk, right? I mean, there's a whole conglomerate of issues that go into raising a healthy cow, and you can't just kick her out to pasture and expect her to do okay. Like, dairy cows are a lot different being than beef cows are. They take they're like the prima donnas of cattle, right? Like they're pretty high maintenance. Like if Paris Hilton was a cow, she'd be a Holstein. Let's just not even get into this. So, you're trying to educate people. And like I said, on the quality milk thing, making milk and making quality milk, the double-edged sword, you have this whole group of people that think we're trying to kill them. The hormones are bad, or there's antibiotics in milk, and it's like, okay, well, no, so we can't give our cows hormones, we can't give cows antibiotics, and so I'm always trying to like educate
people. What do you mean you can't
well, okay,
them
so
that?
I can give antibiotics. I cannot sell the milk if the cow's has had antibiotics, right? There's every antibiotic you have has a withdrawal time. Actually, your vaccines have a withdrawal time. Dewormer has a withdrawal time. Everything's got a withdrawal time on when I can technically sell that milk and when I can't.
So if a cow gets sick and needs antibiotics,
so she goes
like
in,
we humans do.
Yeah. So for us, every farm is going to operate a little different, right? So for us, they go into a hospital pen. So they're isolated into their own pen that gets milked completely separate. They get milked very last, and their milk goes in a completely different area. So you try and idiot-proof it, right? Because if I milk a cow that's had antibiotics and I milk her right in with everybody else, then it's going to come back. They test it at the plant.
And they're going to have to dump the whole load, right?
Yeah, we're going to have to dump the whole load. And I got to pay for it all. I don't want to pay for an entire milk truck full of milk. I don't want to do it. So, you try and make it as idiot proof as you possibly can.
And they test it all, so it's not like people can just sneak it through.
No, you can't sneak it through. It would be virtually impossible unless somebody is not doing their job at the plant level like 3 or 4 different times, because not only is it it's tested before the milk gets unloaded. So I was a receiver for Dairy Gold for a while, so I know how all this thing.
Yeah.
And then I worked in the lab, and then I did a dryer, so I know how this all works. So when the first thing you do when you get to the plant is the sample goes and they check it before it ever gets hooked up or anything gets done. The very first thing they do is they check it for antibiotics, right? So if it's good, we go ahead and unload it and everything. Well, there's another sample that actually goes to the laboratory, and it's literally a 3-hour like incubation test where you actually like incubate this little test and make sure that there's absolutely no antibiotics. Well, then it's also tested like at the state level. Like they will pull samples and test like in a completely offsite laboratory to make sure like there's really no antibiotics.
A lot of layers.
Yes, there is really no
security.
Antibiotics in your milk, like at all. I mean, at all. So,
Wow.
and if there is, you're in trouble. FDA is going to come knock on your door. So, and we also have, like FDA requires we keep like 3 years worth of, I believe it's 3 years worth of like written records of every cow on our farm that gets antibiotics. I got to write her down. I got to write down what she had, how much she had, when she had it, when was the last time she had it. And then I also have to keep track of like what the actual withdrawal time is on that antibiotic. So I mean, there's a lot of behind the scenes like paperwork and log work and record keeping, you know, and hanging on to those records. Like even on the beef quality side of things, like if I sold a cow that came back, like she had, you know, they test their carcasses, right, for antibiotic residue. If like, let's say she had a last drug she had was like 3 years ago. Well, I mean, obviously there's a problem with that antibiotic and they're going to want to know about it, right? So that's why they require you, you know, to keep such.
They can know every single thing.
Yeah, they want to know every single thing. They probably want to know where I sleep at night. Sometimes I feel like that.
Well, they probably do.
They probably do. Yeah, I know. Big Brother is like.
And if they don't, Mark Zuckerberg does, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Me and Mark are pretty tight, so I spend a lot of time on Facebook. You're welcome, Mark.
Well, thanks for sharing this story of how you got to do what you do and a little taste of some of the things that go into it. I know we could cover so much more because I think we're just scratching the surface of how your dairy works.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I probably don't even know everything like on how my dairy works, you know, right? Yeah. Like there's probably things that Roy does that I don't even know about. Well, I probably should, but you know what I mean? There's so many different, right now we've got like 8 different employees between our part-time and our full-time. And, you know, I think it would be impossible to know absolutely every little freaking detail that goes on. I try, but I try.
Well, thanks for being willing to chat.
Yeah, not a problem.